Thank you very much, Deputies, and thank you for your questions and your contributions. I will answer as many questions as I can, but also recognise that I can provide a further briefing for Deputies on a technical basis, and I'm very happy to come to the committee where we can do more back and forth. It is important that Deputies have the opportunity to contribute in this House as well, but please do, as I always try to do, let me answer as many questions as I possibly can, recognising that there's some duplication with those questions. The question of 2010 is simply the point of skeletal maturity, and that was the initial look back to account for the children who are still children. I don't think it should be necessarily cut off at that point, Deputy. I do think that we should prioritise the children first before people who are now adults. I do recognise that I have a transitional model of care for those who are in that 16, 17, 18 space moving into the adult care, but I will discuss it with the CEO of the HSE. There's no desire to exclude, there never is. In relation to the age of 7 that was brought up by 2 deputies, this was a clinical audit between the ages of 12 months and 7 years, designed to try to capture the experience between 2021 and 2023. Again, doesn't seek to exclude the other experience, but it's about a clinical audit within those parameters. So it's not limited to that. And again, I have to be really clear that it was an anonymised audit. So there's no way, and I said this on Friday, but please let me say it again. There's no way that a parent can ring up and say, "Was my child in that audit?" Because I don't know. I don't know. It by definition was an anonymised clinical audit. While we are prioritising this follow-up, and the follow-up and the care is most important, let me say 2 things. One, I completely respect that parents shouldn't have to walk into a hospital where they've had, or they feel they have had, or worry that they have had a negative experience. We do need to provide a follow-up, but there has to be a measure of flexibility in that, and I will discuss that with the HSE as well and CHI. So I do not expect parents to have to go back either to the same clinician or in the same process, but that's going to require us to have more flexibility. Deputies also referenced the impact on service delivery, which has to be taken into account. We have a finite number of healthcare professionals. We are trying to grow more. There is an interplay between these different things. The other expert review panel necessarily must be independent, external. I appreciate there's different perspectives on when I should have commissioned that, but having received the report, I think it is really important to get the recommendations and act on them as expeditiously. I appreciate there are some deputies who would have taken a different approach. That's as may be. The important thing is that it's done as quickly as possible. In relation to the letter from Cappagh, let me just say, and I've confirmed with the CEO of the HSE, that letter from Cappagh went to about 20 people. It was the same group but a different reason. It is not intended it's slightly different. The letters haven't issued yet either to Cappagh or anywhere else, as I understand it. But just to be clear, those parents got a call this morning to say that they could of course bring both parents or additional guardian or whatever else. So that is something slightly different and not related to this. I do recognise the limitations with the phone line. That really was an effort to provide some answers to people over the weekend. But the people at that on answering those questions, they don't have any more information than I have, and it was just an initial signposting opportunity to have a clinical ear for parents at the earliest stage over the weekend rather than leave them in total silence. The other questions that have been raised, the accountability and the why, so many different questions asked in relation to this. Can I just say my broad view about accountability in relation to the individual clinicians? There are really 2 mechanisms available for that within the employment law structure and within the professional registration regulation space. I do not have the capacity to fire a consultant in any context. Even if you think about the circumstances in relation to Limerick, where the CEO of the HSE made various steps against people working in the healthcare system, there's those issues went to a court process that is well publicised, even the taking of those different steps. I think there is an imbalance between the fair procedures that individuals have the protection of in all cases, not just in a criminal process, but in employment law processes and in other accountability processes. The balance of protection that is given to the individual and their fair procedures, which are constitutional protections, versus the balance of the broad public good and getting information out there. So many things are hampered by, not hampered by, but we have to go through fair processes, we have to behave in the correct way, and there are good reasons for that. But I do wonder about that interplay over time, and I think it's something this House should reflect on more broadly. It is the case, Deputy Rice, that explanations are advanced by surgeons which were discounted by the auditor. It is therefore the case that surgeons were contesting, at least within the audit process, the findings and advancing alternative explanations which were not stood up. I am not aware of legal proceedings, though that doesn't mean that they won't yet be taken. In relation to the trust about the running of CHI more broadly, I have said clearly, and let me say again, that this is something that I am looking at in the round, that there is a way to go on this, and I will work with deputies, particularly those on the Health Committee, in relation to this. In relation to the why, and this question has come up in a range of different ways, motive, financial, a whole range of different questions. The straight answer is that I do not know the answer to that at this point, and neither was it investigated in the clinical audit, though I do think it is an exceptionally important question, and the Taoiseach articulated it this morning. I would like to take steps to reflect on how we might get to the bottom of that, recognising that I think it's important that we also get the NIGAM report, which is linked to these different issues within orthopaedic surgery. So perhaps deputies would allow me to get that report also, and then reflect on those questions about motivation and how we might get better answers in relation to that. I am not discounting anything in relation to motivation, and I'm always very interested to hear deputies' perspectives on that. But let's perhaps get that NIGAM report and then reflect on how we would think about the mechanism for that as well. Can I say in relation to the public-private system more broadly, that, and I just want this to be completely clear, I am an advocate of public health system. If people want to have private health insurance and go to private hospitals, they are welcome to do that. This is a free country. I am a minister trying to implement a public system with no other interest in it. I am an advocate for the full implementation of the public-only consultant contract. I will be taking further steps to try to remove the perverse incentives, whatever you want to call it, that have led to, that feature today because of the overhanging mix of public-private activity. You will not hear me, being dissuaded from that. It's very, very important. But it is also important that we use the levers that we have to address the waiting lists where we can, because what that means is our constituents, our people getting operations today instead of some other time while we all go on this transition together. But I am an advocate of a public health care system. There is no advantage to having insurance in the paediatric system in particular, and I do not want to see hospitals asking people, do they have insurance really ever again? It is not important or relevant in a public hospital. So just to clarify that, in case that needs clarifying. Can I just take the last 2 minutes to say that while I have tried to answer as many different questions as I can in relation to this report, I appreciate that I've come in here this evening and I've spoken now for nearly 25 minutes at the beginning and the end of the report in a very governance-focused, executive sort of way, trying to answer the questions that are rightly asked, to try to set a direction of policy change, to try to set a direction in terms of accountability. Can I take my last 2 minutes to just speak about it as a public representative, and in the same way that all of the rest of you have these very, very, very personal concerns about what has happened. Like you, I am deeply aware of the impact of surgeries being done to small children that were not warranted. I am aware of the feeling that parents will have had be hearing that a surgery was warranted and making a decision to either have that surgery or not have that surgery, as the case may be. The responsibility that parents take upon themselves to follow clinical advice, and the lack of alternative information that is available to them. It's like reading Chinese on the Chinese sign being on the wall, and only the doctor can read Chinese. You have no choice in many ways but to follow the guidance. That responsibility that a clinician holds is enormous. And where that responsibility has been used in a way that is wrong is hugely problematic, but where it is used in a way that is casually wrong and has implications for the small bodies of small children is, as you have all said, unconscionable. And I want to just take that time to say that, so that my response is not one that is removed from the feeling of these things and is overly focused on the executive response that is appropriate and necessary, and it is important that you hold me accountable in relation to that. But I did just want to take that opportunity to recognise that this is something that is deeply hurtful, that has caused enormous worry to so many parents who thought that they were taking the right steps on behalf of their children in a properly governed, properly functional system with professional consultants making correct decisions. And I do just want that other perspective also to be heard very clearly. I know Ministers of State have articulated it. I know the deputies on this side of the House. I know the deputies of this side of the House have articulated it. But we do that as a collective, and I just want to take the time to make sure that that is done by me also. Thank you.